meeting if you've had one since then. Don't be shy. Or if you haven't used the design worksheet, what was something new that you tried in your group? Let me do this. How many of you have had a group meeting since we met last? One. Oh, okay. So not everyone has met yet, but certainly a handful. So of those of you who've raised your hand, could you just share a little bit about how your group went and whether you use these? Sure, Nancy, I see your hand. Thank you.
I wanted to use the opening ritual of sharing, forgot what we called it already, thorns, something and something, what was like good and what happened to you this past month that you want to share, whether good, bad, or otherwise. And everybody sort of sat there like we all just did. And so I started sharing because that's what I do. I'm like talking and I shared something. It wasn't earth shaking, but it was a nice thing, you know, personally. And then nobody spoke. So my husband shared something. And it was not a nice thing. My nephew in Israel was sick with COVID in the hospital. Anyway, he's fine. And then nobody else really shared anything. So it sort of was hard. And, you know, none of us have met in person. Nobody has ever seen each other. So it's, even though we've met for most of us for the last semester, it's still a little bit awkward in that sense. Of course, when we talk about vaccines, everybody's sharing, you know, news, whatever. But anyway, that was kind of a little bit of a disappointment for me.
So that was the opening. Okay, let's keep that in mind also as we move to our troubleshooting, because I think let me just see a show of hands. Does anyone else have that issue with people in their group or has had that issue with kind of the leader opening up the conversation? And yeah, okay, I think we're gonna work around that a little bit, Nancy. So thank you for saying that. I just wanted to clarify the question you asked. Could you just clarify what was the question you asked when no one jumped in? Because I just wanted to say one thing, and I think Wendy has said it before, there sometimes can be an uncomfortable moment where you just kind of have to wait. And that can be something that can be helpful. But I just wanted to know, what was your question or your prompt when you had no response?
You mean what was the original question, or what did I say after?
So you jumped in, you said, because no one was saying anything.
Well, I did wait though. I mean, I didn't just jump right in. I did, it was a big pause, so.
But was there a question? Was it like, how is everyone? I'm just curious, what was?
Gosh. I just mentioned that I probably had, you know, an idea from these, I told them about the leadership meetings and great idea to start with a ritual. You know, I kind of did a little preface and said, from what I remember, you know, anything you want to share about the past month since we last met, and, you know, good, bad, or otherwise, something, you know, it was, I think I did it, I said it in a way that wasn't intimidating, but then they just looked at me, so.
Okay, so let's put that on hold to our next section. But thank you for thinking of that and sharing what you did in the group as well. And you're a boomer group, right? So what you have in common is a demographic-based group, right? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Did someone else observe or try anything that went well last time, or that you did have kind of takers? Would love to hear some of that.
Okay, mine went really well.
Yeah, who's talking? I can't see. Sorry.
Sari,
yes, please,
yeah.
Sari, tell us.
My meeting went very well. In the beginning, Nancy Cooper, I had the same problem that you did. And it took me a while to figure out what they were interested in and what would get them to participate. And toward the end of last session, it started really getting good. And now this first session went so well that I actually received emails from almost half the group thanking me. Tori's shaking her head, her mom's in the group. We had a great meeting. Yeah, it was great. So it sometimes it just takes time, especially in the beginning.
Sari, what do you think the difference was?
We had some new people in the meeting, so I wanted everybody to feel comfortable. And so I talked about why we're here and what the temple was doing, and kind of greeted I didn't ask them to talk. I greeted the new people to make them feel comfortable. And then we talked about, you know, why we are here and the sense of belonging that Wendy was talking about. So I used that theme, and at least half of the people shared why they were here and their sense of belonging. And that took up a lot of time. And then now at the end, Jackie's suggestion to me, at the end of every meeting, we stop about 10 minutes before and we bring in the Shabbat, because our meetings are on Fridays at 5 o'clock, just before the temple has their service. And so that was excellent. Yeah, had an excellent meeting. And I did, who said, don't take ownership, you're a facilitator. So I did that. And I actually got 2 people emailing me with ideas to host the next meeting. So I was thrilled. Yeah.
That's so wonderful. So it sounds like, let's see, you incorporated some ritual at the end. You used belonging as your intention and also as the question that kind of opened things up for people. Sorry for the phone ringing in the background, everyone. And you also are going to do what Wendy's going to talk about later about sharing ownership. And you had people who wanted to participate immediately, and you had great feedback immediately as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sari.
Sure.
Someone else, I saw Jeannie's hand. Jeannie, did you raise your hand? Or was this, did you want to?
Yeah, I did raise my hand. And feel free to jump in and add anytime. We started with the popcorn intros because we did have, was it 6 new people or 5 new people join us? The one thing I would say we did was we overpacked our agenda. Everything took longer than we expected. And we tried something, since I'm new to co-leading with Jackie, and I use one challah recipe and Jackie uses another challah recipe. We think that does not work because it just adds time. So 1 week or 1 month we'll make Jackie's recipe, 1 month we'll make my recipe, 1 month we'll make somebody else's recipe. So we're going to try things differently that way. And we always end with a ritual, which Jackie started, which is the Misha Barak. And it's incredibly healing. Jackie works some magic that gets people talking and just opening up brilliantly. And I joined the group because I wanted to learn from Jackie. So, you know, please add and step in with the magic that you make happen.
Thank you, Jeannie. I think it's just, we're following these principles together, and we're also learning like everyone else. So yeah, thank you for saying. Jeannie, can you see your group again? And can everyone else who spoke just say their group? When you speak for the first time, we had a request for that, and that's a good idea. So Jeannie, which group are you?
Oh, I already muted, and I'm Women's Challah Baking Group with Jackie Shelton Miller.
Thank you. And Sari, can you tell us your group too again?
I'm in a boomers group.
Boomers group. And Nancy, you are too. And Nancy, I did see that you wrote in the chat that your meeting did go well. It was the opening ritual that you were posing. Right. And so that's something to think about, that, you know, we can brainstorm around or kind of think of other ideas. And just, I think like other people say, sometimes it's hard to have something that sticks. It might take a little work, but it will happen. I'm convinced of it. And we've heard some of those positive experiences this time. So please continue, you know, use those sheets. They can be really helpful to really map out your session ahead of time. And it's a good way to kind of plan. So you kind of, maybe you'll have a backup question, or, you know, you'll just have something else that you'll have in mind as you go through that, and continue to try new things and observe in your group. But let's now move a bit to some of the troubleshooting, because we already heard a few things. You know, we definitely have heard about, you know, that ritual kind of needed maybe a little bit more, wasn't quite right for that moment. Sari, I think you and I spoke ahead of time too, and while you didn't have an issue now, I'm wondering if you could highlight the other issue that you had mentioned to me that you had in your group that perhaps may also be something that affects others.
Sure. It was funny enough, it was just prior to our first session of leadership training. And there was somebody else who was leading a group who was in my group, who attested to the fact that 3 people took over the meeting and never stopped talking, and you couldn't get a word in edgewise. And it was, as much as we tried to change the subject, we could not get them to stop talking.
Has anyone else had an issue with that? Let me see, Paula, Anne, similar. Did anyone want to add anything to that? Paula, it looks like you would like to say
I'll
something.
add to that. I actually, the way we've been doing our meetings, and I'm also a boomers group, is I direct the meeting, and especially since on Zoom, everyone sees the order of participants in a different way. So I will call upon the participants and I kind of control it. So I have to say, since I started leading this group, when we were meeting, we've been meeting for, my group, the base group has been meeting for like the last 5 years. So we've been together a long time, and we used to meet in person, and we would run into this issue where people would dominate the conversation. But since we've switched to Zoom and I kind of direct it, people, I don't know, they're just attentive and they pay attention. So we have not run into that one person, dominating the conversation, because I make sure that each person gets an opportunity to speak. So, and that makes people, I think, even more aware of how much time they're spending talking. So you might want to try that. It's just, the leader conducts it, sort of, Leah's next, Joan's next, Rabbi Paris is next, that sort of thing.
Thank you. Thank you for suggesting that. We're going to go into small groups in a little bit and do some more brainstorming. So because that's a wonderful suggestion, and that might be very helpful to others. I am wondering, does anyone else have the issue with people dominating, or anything that they would want to add to that? Anne, what happened in your group?
Hi, I'm in the knitting group.
Thank you.
Knitting. So something structured that was suggested wouldn't work. I love the free for all. But the person is really entertaining, the person who dominates. So, I mean, I guess this is like any social situation, just have to figure a gracious way to bring other people into the conversation. So I'm interested in some tips. Thank you.
Thanks. We're going to break into small groups in just a little bit and do some brainstorming, but it's interesting to hear that it has come up in other groups as well. So I wanted to bring up one other issue. I also spoke to another small group leader ahead of time who couldn't be here, Sylvia Cheskis, and I'm wondering if she also is perhaps highlighting an issue that others of you have experienced. I know Jeannie and I have too, which is people not showing up. Has anyone else had the experience with people in your group not attending, not being there, not responding? Or because, yeah. And what does that look like? Can anyone, I mean, a person who doesn't show up, that hasn't responded, that hasn't told you they're not showing up, that just maybe you haven't been able to engage so far. Can anyone else share what's going on with them with that topic and their group? No, Amy?
There's one person in our group who came to the first session. This is our second series.
Mm-hmm.
And she continues on our list, and she wants to continue, but each month has a different reason why not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, as one of the 2 leaders, keep in touch with her by email each month and say, hope to see you next month. And she said, I hope so. And
Mm-hmm.
but she just came once out of the 6 times we've met.
And your group, tell us your group again.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Accent on Brooklyn. We're
Accent on Brooklyn. Great.
Brooklyn.
So you're in touch with her. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So you have some kind of connection, but she hasn't been able to make it.
Yeah. And wants to. I mean, I was surprised that when we re-registered that she didn't drop out, but continues to be interested.
Thank you for sharing that. Has anyone else had that? Let me ask something else. Please go ahead.
I was just thinking about this, about people who might talk more than others. Maybe they need to. people are by themselves. Some people are at home alone. You know, maybe we have to think differently now about that, right? It just occurred to me.
It's an interesting point with regard to the talking, and I look forward to hearing what people come up with in their small groups. But I think thinking about the overlay of COVID and isolation on everything is something interesting. And yet I think there can be a way that there might be some flexibility for people who need that, and yet it won't be a way that others feel they can't jump into. So
Thank you.
Paula, and then I want to raise one other issue before we go into small groups. Please,
Yeah,
Paula.
I just want to clarify, not dominate the conversation, but our group discusses a specific topic. So I think if you're doing knitting, you're probably having conversations, whereas we have a very set topic that we discuss. So if we didn't keep it, make sure that each person got an allotted amount of, I mean, I don't have a specific amount of time, but we wouldn't get through our whole group. So I just wanted to clarify that we're working on a specific discussion topic.
Just to clarify, Paul, you're using the guides that I'm sending out each month.
That's right. And I know I keep telling you this, Rabbi Sarah, but oh my God, they have been so successful. And I'd love to tell you about my experience last night, but off camera. Yeah, really, just use her guides, folks. They are fantastic.
I will send another one. The one for this month is going to be about trying new things. It's called Na'aseh v'Nishma, which is kind of like going and experimenting. So I'm hoping that it will be something that every group can connect with at different life stages and activities.
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you both for mentioning that and for that reminder, because that is a great thing to send to your group, whether you use it or not. And it's a great jumping off point. We're going to go into small groups in a minute, but I wanted to ask one more question because I'm still kind of wondering in my mind which topic we should do. I saw that some people said they're people who don't attend. I'm wondering if maybe a bigger issue that I feel that I heard in the group, though, a little bit is when you open up a conversation and no one participates. I mean, that's kind of what Nancy kind of had started with. Has anyone else had that experience where it just feels kind of general, like you bring up a topic and there's no one bites? Is that something that is resonating with others as well? Or why doesn't someone tell me something else that's goes on that might not be, I'm just wondering what we have in common, because we should really troubleshoot the issues that are affecting most people in the group. And it's a quiet group today. So I'm just trying to figure out, what's going on in people's minds? I'm looking around. Jeannie, please.
Okay, this has not occurred in the Hall of Baking group, but in another group that I've been in. One of the temple topics, which was post-election, things went haywire in the group I was in, and someone in the group got caught in a loop. I think getting into things that are politically charged and are probably not, that's probably not a good topic to bring up, and it shouldn't be encouraged. So that was one thing I've witnessed. And something happened in a group last night that was uncomfortable for me. We were talking about, the and that someone that was being discussed is this famous person is out of the US. He had sex with a 13-year-old and never went to trial for it because he escaped the US. And an attorney started arguing with me and telling me he was never found guilty. I'm like, I don't think that's a good enough reason, because it's known his activity, and I just shut down because I wasn't going to argue with an attorney. So I think
I hear what you're
some of the
saying.
groups might.
Oops. I think what I hear you saying, and this might be something that could come up in the groups too, is what happens when someone starts a conversation that feels inappropriate for whatever reason. It's off topic, it's too sensitive, it's about politics, it's, I know some of you have had this in the group, it's about stuff going on at the synagogue that just doesn't feel like the appropriate place to have that kind of discussion. What does one do? That's also something that we can discuss. Has anyone had that? You know, I'm also wondering if I'm not hearing more this morning because some of you haven't had your meetings yet and it's still new, and which is making me think that why don't we have a little less time in our breakout group that we'll go into, we'll troubleshoot a couple of these ideas, and then I think we'll hand it over to Wendy to talk about shared ownership, because maybe we'll have a little bit more of the teaching piece for some of these that will be also helpful. I hope that sounds okay. Does that sound okay to you, Wendy? Because that's kind of the feeling I'm getting by looking. So I think it would be really helpful, or we have thought it would be really helpful to go into small groups. Leah's going to break us down into small groups. Again, the topics that we've had before, but you can choose as a group. Why don't you just pick one, either someone dominating the conversation, people not showing up, that doesn't work. People not showing up or people not participating, kind of like Nancy laid out, or maybe the third one that Jeannie just mentioned about conversations kind of going awry, like how you rein them in. Why don't you pick one of those three in your small group? And we're going to spend a few minutes doing some brainstorming around that. And then we'll share out, because I think, as you already heard this morning with Paula and with other people, we're our own best teachers in this group. We have the knowledge to share with each other, to help one another. And part of that is for us to connect. So we'd love to do that. Let's do that. And then we're going to move on to shared ownership, which Wendy is going to talk about, which also alleviates some of these issues that we're highlighting. And I think it may be good to spend more time there. But we want to give you a chance to break out and get to know each other for a few minutes. So Leah, do you think you can break us out into the small groups? And again, remember that you have the choice of those three topics, whatever seems to work for most of the people in the small group. And then we'll come back as a group and talk about the ideas we came up with.
That's a good idea.
You want to share something with the group? Because we are just going to follow up in terms of what were some good ideas we heard. First of all, what I noted, I just want to say, it's really nice when we can get together in the smaller groups. People, I think, are just happy to meet the other small group leaders and just hear a little bit about what we're each doing and who we are. So that was really nice. And I'd love to hear what people came up with. Tell us what issue you were trying to solve or brainstorm around and what ideas you came up with. And Joan, I'll turn it over to you. Did you have something helpful you wanted to share?
Well, no, I was just explaining, last night was my first group, and you know, and I teach mindful meditation, and in that I begin, you know, with a poem, and I welcome people for taking this step to look at their life through another lens, and then I go into the ground rules, and the most important ground rule is that what is said in this group is completely confidential. I said, you are more than welcome to share your experience with someone else, but you are not allowed to share someone else's experience. And so, so what I did was I just, you know, told them my story. And I said, listen, it's fine for you to pass. Just say your name. And if you pass that, we'll let someone else be able to pass as well. But everyone told their story. And I've taught this class for quite a while, not with Temple, but privately. And it was the most revealing session of people telling everyone what they're going through. And we just sort of sat, and in mindfulness, we believe in mindful listening and mindful talking. So when somebody is talking, we just listen. You know, that's what we do in mindfulness, you know, and mindful talking is just, you know, saying what they think is appropriate and what they would like to share. And so that's sort of how it went. And it was very good.
It sounds amazing. I feel like I heard a few things. First of all, you happen to be a group, as you mentioned, that the topic is mindfulness, which includes listening and talking. I sounds like you went over some ground rules, which really set the tone in a very clear way for your group. Also giving permission for someone to pass, which is also important if a person doesn't want to participate, to feel like that was okay. And I think the other thing I heard that's really important, you really created a safe space. You created a space where people could feel vulnerable and open, knowing whatever they shared was contained within that group in the best way, with, I'm sure, some of the things that were on the brief, you know, in terms of our good intentions behind this. And it sounds like you were very successful by the fact that everyone went around and shared in a very deeply personal way. Does that sound right? That's
Sounds
what I think
exactly
I
right.
heard. And it's so powerful, isn't it? Even on Zoom, when that can happen. It's
Yes.
not even in the same group, but yet when you create that environment in the way that you did, and I think, we can all do that based on some of the things that Joan mentioned. It doesn't just have to be a group that focuses on mindfulness, but the idea of setting these ground rules and creating this safe space really enables people to feel comfortable sharing. Thank you for sharing that, Joan.
Of course.
Who else would like to share something that they just kind of worked around in their small group just now? Tori. Thank you. And tell us your group too, please.
So I'm Tori, and I'm doing a quarantines connection, connecting 16 to 20-year-olds with isolated senior citizens in our Temple community. And we haven't had our first meeting yet, and we are. And the one thing I was anticipating was the not showing up and participating because they're teenagers. And on that kind of piggybacking on that is also the sharing of leadership responsibilities, because we can get them to participate and get them to do some leading also. And David, who is leading a new parents group, gave me some great feedback. And I think assigning one of them to check in on their peers to see if they've been making their phone calls, and also assigning maybe a connection question or an ice-breaking game in the beginning, assigning it to one of them, because there's 10 of them. Getting them all in one room at the same time is a challenge. And but I'm definitely going to spread the leadership out by giving them an assignment in the beginning, because I think that's going to be the best way, is to tell them what to do still.
That sounds great. That's wonderful that you shared that. First of all, you have a group of teens, so I would say that's a little bit different in some ways, probably than adults. And I think what you're doing, even though you're saying assignment, perhaps if I might say, I think you're inviting ownership and participation. You're inviting them to participate and take a leadership role, which feels empowering. They're going to have the chance to shape what happens in the group through those roles, and would love to hear more about how that goes in the future, Tori. But
yeah, I'm interested because I actually know all the people in the group ahead of time, so I have a relationship with a lot of them.
Right.
So
this is going to transition so beautifully into some things Wendy is sharing, which is you probably know some of those unique personalities and talents that you might be able to tease out. So that's wonderful. And it makes me also, thank you for sharing that, want to ask David, is he still here? People are moving around on my screen. What are the tips you shared from your group, if you don't mind? Because it sounds like you perhaps have a wealth of things you
Sure.
can
So I was going to
share.
say, just from my own personal experience on this call, I just noticed for myself that I get a little camera shy. And if there's a group of 20 people on this call that I don't know, this is the first time I'm speaking on this call. Generally, I'm an extrovert, but when there's a group of people I don't know, I don't feel as connected, and so I don't want to chime in or take myself off mute, just for whatever reason, fear of public speaking in a way. But something that I did notice is that as soon as we got into breakout rooms, I felt immediately more comfortable. And so maybe posing a question and doing breakout rooms earlier on, I suddenly feel so much more connected to Tori and so much more connected to Zoe, and I feel like I know some of the participants on the call. So I was going to say, we have our call next week, and I might try and do a breakout room earlier on, just to get people talking much sooner rather than later. And again, I'm just taking this from my own personal experience on this call alone. And the other thing I've noticed is that there's multiple times where I've wanted to chime in, and just because I'm quiet doesn't mean that I'm not mentally participating. There's so many times where I've been like, oh, I totally agree with that, or I wanted to say something. And so I think, if someone called on me like you just did right now, Jackie, I would be happy to jump in and say my thoughts. And so I think, just popcorning over to someone else could be a really good thing. And so I might even call out some people right now, if that's okay.
Please, and thank you for all that great feedback.
Sure. And I would say, I haven't heard from Annie. Annie, if you would like to chime in, or if you'd prefer not to, again, kind of following Joan, it's a safe space. If you prefer not to, totally fine. But I just haven't heard from Annie. So if you'd like to chime in, Annie, feel free to kind of see or talk about what worked for you.
Hi, thanks. So I haven't had my group meeting yet. I have a book club, and I'm definitely concerned about participation because we had a doodle poll to find a time for everybody. We picked a time. I sent out the invite and some people haven't even responded to that. And I've sent a couple individual emails and people have been pretty slow on responding to those. And one person said she can't make the meeting even though she could in the doodle poll. So it's a small group anyway. So I'm kind of wondering how that's going to go.
Did you have a chance to discuss that at all in your group, or?
We haven't met yet.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, in your small breakout group, like what you're going to do or what? You're going to wait and see what happens. You're really just at the beginning still of.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll have to, I guess, follow up afterwards, but maybe some of these conversations will help think proactively about some of the things that could have come up. So yeah, thank you, David, for asking that of Annie. And thank you for, it's taking a chance, you know, when you just said, I just wanted to go back to something you said, David, which is you might not like to be called on in a big group. And I didn't say that it was okay to pass at the beginning, which it always is. So that's kind of taking a chance and asking Annie, but yet you role modeled that in such a beautiful way by calling on someone else who hadn't participated that I think, did that feel comfortable, Annie, when David just asked you to jump in for a moment?
Kind of.
Kind of, okay, not sure, okay. Well, look, it's good to be open. You don't always know what it's going to be like, but I think it's interesting what we just heard about being in big groups versus small, where one feels comfortable. And it's great feedback to think that maybe we needed to connect a bit more together first, and then maybe the conversation would have been a little bit different afterwards. So anyway, that's great feedback. Before I turn it over to Wendy, does anyone else have anything to say about a conversation in their small group that they would like to share in a larger group? Nancy.
One thing that I wanted to share was, and as I was saying it in our small group, I realized it personally, and I think actually Anne mentioned this, is during time of the pandemic, people are different in some ways. Some people, like she said, have more of a need to talk or whatever. We have one person in our group that kind of dominates quite a bit. This last meeting though, she had some anger in her comments that were inappropriate, and she answered some other people inappropriately, I thought. And I was saying in our small group that in the past, when I've led groups in person, it's a bit easier because in person you have the body language, you have the physicality of seeing how everybody else is reacting. It's a little bit limited on Zoom. So I think I'm going to have to talk to this person privately in a tactful, nice way. But I do think the Zoom, for me, it's been difficult. I've never led groups in Zoom. I've led many groups in person, but I'm learning, so.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Nancy. That can be tricky. And I think having that sensitivity, kind of that balance between noticing something and yet not wanting to call a person out to make them uncomfortable or embarrass them in the group is very real. So that's something we can also talk about offline in terms of that. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Wendy, but I just want to say thank you, everyone, for sharing all the different ideas that came back about connecting in small groups, about thinking about how to encourage participation, about setting ground rules, about all the different good ideas that came up within this group, and about participating today in the conversation. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to Wendy now. Thanks.
Great conversation. There's one thing I want to say that feeds into this, which is that that these groups grow. They're like children. You know, they start at one point. Some of you haven't even met yet. They build trust. They build comfort. I mean, we're not meeting in person, so that's even harder. I mean, we're trying to do this with the limitations of a virtual meeting, and yet, you know, you can still share deeply on Zoom, and you can still go really far. But it takes patience, and it takes baby steps, and you kind of can start. You can start sharing at a very comfortable level. You know, you don't have to go as deep as I heard some of you go into the personal. You can start at a more comfortable level and kind of let people take ownership at a slower pace. So what we want to talk about next is, how do you build towards that? How do you build towards groups where everyone feels like it's their group? It's not your group. You know, you didn't come up with the teenagers own it, the golfers own it, the book group people own it, the cyclers own it. It's not just you delivering this as a service. So I want to talk about how you get there. And I just have a few quick things I'm going to share in a few slides. And then we're going to break into small groups again and see if we can come up with some ways. Okay, right. Oh, can you empower me, Leah, to share? I seem to have the problem.
You should be able to now. Give it a try.
Nope. Not working. I can just talk. Not working. Okay. I'll just talk. Great. And sorry about the barking dog. All right, so, remembering that this culture of belonging framework, and we talked about this last time we met, for those of you who were there, it's like, for me anyway, it's like putting on a pair of glasses and looking at everything differently and looking at how are people included, how are they not included? And I just heard, I think it was David do this. He noticed who hadn't spoken, and that's because he was wearing belonging glasses. It's like, who's included, who's not included, what are the goals here? And it really kind of allows you to see things differently when you put on belonging glasses. And we're thinking differently when you wear those glasses. You're thinking differently about providing a transaction, providing a service, your group as a service, versus bringing people in as partners or owners of your small group. So instead of focusing on providing content and creating a program for people to consume, you're focusing on feelings of, how do you want people to feel? What do you want them to know? How do you want them to connect with each other? And how do you want them to feel sort of valued? So thinking about that. Instead of focusing on customer satisfaction and making sure that they're pleased with the product that they've consumed, you want them to create experiences where they can feel a sense of ownership. Instead of focusing on recruiting people to just sort of sign up to volunteer or to join your experience or your program, you want to invite people to contribute their unique strengths to the group. And so that's the secret. So how do we do that? So I have a little slide here that I want you to imagine. And hold on one second. I actually need to see if I can get my dog to stop. Can you guys hear the barking dog? A little bit, not too bad. Okay.
Not bad.
If it's not too bad, if it's not too bad for you, it's okay for me. So there's a couple of steps to doing that. The first one is to really get to know the people in your group and what is unique and special about them. What are their strengths? What are their assets? What are their skills, their talents, their personality strengths that are special? So you do that. That's actually where some of the creativity comes in. So you can have an asset mapping exercise within your group. You can just have personal conversations. You could have a survey, and we actually have an asset mapping tool that I can share a link for that you can use to kind of create an exercise where people are putting on a sheet. You can do this virtually, all the different things that they do and offer. And so, or you can just have personal conversations, or people can interview each other. Okay, what are all the amazing things that are special about each of the people in your group that they bring? And you want to map all of those strengths so you understand what are all of the gifts that are part of your group. The second thing you want to do, and you can do this together, or you can do this as the facilitator or the leader of the group, is to get creative about how each person might contribute those gifts to your group. Not all of them. I mean, If in your book group you have someone who's an excellent golfer, and you can't figure out how they're going to bring those golfing skills to your book group, that's okay. Maybe there's something else that they do. Maybe they're an extrovert, and they can come up with a way, and you can come up with a way that they can contribute their incredible people skills to your group. So, so you're looking for what are the unique sort of assets of each person. If there's some nugget, some kernel that they can bring, that's what you're trying to come up with. And then once you've kind of figured out a way that each person can bring that special gift to your group, you want to invite them. Invite them based on what's specifically unique about them. So quarantine group, where was the quarantine group? Oh, Tori. So you're in the position where you're kind of ready to do this. You talked about how you want to bring your teams into roles. So don't just assign them to roles. Don't just say, okay, you do this, you do this. See if you can figure out what's unique about each of the teams and what's the right role for each of them, because nobody ever said no. Everyone says no to, I promise you, everyone says no to, I have a sign-up sheet. I have all these jobs. I need you guys all to sign up for that, for these jobs. Nobody's going to sign up, I promise you. You've all seen this. Hardly anyone signs up, except for the person who signs up for everything. But nobody ever says no to this question. Wendy Kessler, you are so beautiful. You write the most beautiful poetry. Would you please write a poem for this person's birthday for the next meeting? And you'd say, I would love to write a poem for this person's birthday for the next meeting. Thank you for seeing that I am a poet. Thank you for seeing that special gift about me. So that is the way that you see people. That's the way people feel seen and that they feel meaningful, because they've been invited based on their unique gift. And then the last thing I'll say is that you start small and specific, and you grow into the roles. You're not going to have people, you're not going to have people owning and running your group right away, but you might have somebody show up and write a birthday poem for somebody in your group. You might have, if your goal is by the end of the year, I want everyone to show up and just, contribute something. I want everyone to bake chalot for everyone and sort of deliver challah to everyone's doorstep or something as a Shabbat gift. Or I want everyone to, or I want, this one person to, I don't know, reach out to the people who didn't show up because they're super friendly, and just have a check-in call to the no-shows every time because that's what they're good at. And just little things, little stepping stones. Over time, you can grow those into regular roles and leadership roles. And pretty soon, over time, you're not so much running the show. You're facilitating, but you have shared ownership, and people are in it with you. So those are the steps. You want to ask, listen, and map the strengths. You want to get creative about how everyone can contribute. You want to invite, and you start small and specific, and you grow into the roles. Does that make sense? So we're going to break down, and I don't know how much time we have because I've been talking, not looking at time, but we're going to do a quick simulation. So we're going to break into groups of 4, and you're going to pretend you're a small group, and it's just a generic small group. You're just a small group that exists for the purpose of connecting to connect. And you're going to just quickly go around and share one thing that one strength, like whatever, just one strength, something very unique and special about you that you're proud of. And then you're going to brainstorm what is a way that this group can use your strength. So that's all. So as a group, you're figuring out how you might use the strength for this group to strengthen this group. Does that make sense? And it's just a practice. It's an exercise to help you think about how you might do this in your own groups. Any questions about what I shared and the exercise we're going to jump into? And how much time do we have, Jackie? Oops, you're muted. 5 minutes? 5 minutes? Okay. So you have to be quick. You just say like, I am great with spreadsheets. Great. I'm great with, I don't know. I'm a physical trainer. Whatever. Just share your thing, share your best thing, and then figure out how each person can contribute to the group. It can be crazy, it can be silly, it doesn't have to be real, but just for the purpose of an exercise. Okay? It doesn't have to be, it can be a group of 3, Leah, if we can't get everybody into 4.
I think we're all good.
Okay, cool. 5 minutes. So it was short but sweet. Hopefully you had a chance to at least share your beautiful gifts with each other. And I'm just curious, you know, how it felt to share your gifts. And what, you know, and if you came up with some good ideas of how to use them. Anyone want to?
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah,
Good.
I mean, it was.
Tell me an example.
Well, I hope it's not being too sharing, but Amy said, you know, I'm an artist. I don't know how I'd share that. And I said, well, you know, I'm an art historian. I think, you know, there's a bridge. And then we got into a whole conversation, like all of us, you know, I mean, it was like, so I think you can't take for granted that what your strength is something that, you know, how would I talk about this? I think there are many bridges to connecting everybody. And yeah, I mean, our little breakout group, I hated to see it end. we were in a good discussion. So
awesome. Any other observations? Wendy.
This is Wendy from Divorcing Jewishly. I have to say that Jackie is modeling the very behaviors she's that you've invited us to demonstrate in our groups by sending me a private message. And Jackie, I'm so outing you for me inviting me to share. So I'm going to take her invitation up and tell you that we had a great small group. There were a few incredible revelations, not the least of which is Archer's preferences for the sway versus the bounce, and and this is incredible. Jean was a line cook at Kukari. So I have no bones. I'm not proud about disclosing anything. I signed no NDA at the beginning of this meeting. So all things are open, but I will say that it took longer. It was a surprise to me to hear, to see how long it took for everyone to disclose their strengths. And I think we wondered about that and felt like it's not often that we are asked point blank to do that. We are all, I think, modest and probably respectful and don't lead with that. So that took a bit. And then sweetly, Jackie summarized pulled the whole thing together by identifying each of our strengths and how we would use it. And I think we've just created a new Babai in the last 10 minutes. So each of us have our own role. It was a great exercise. And Wendy, thank you for teeing it up so well. And Jackie, thanks for summarizing as you did.
Amazing, amazing. It is uncomfortable to boast your strengths. And sometimes you're not even prepared to do that. You're like, well, I haven't thought about that. And to do it in 5 minutes is not fair with no warning. So take it with a grain of salt. There are ways to tease it out and to do it in a less confrontational way. So you should get creative about how you do that. One way is to have people interview each other. So it's kind of just one-on-one. And one way would be for you to have one-on-one conversations with people and just have a relational conversation. There are asset mapping exercises. I know Jeannie's done some of those, I think. Jackie's probably been involved in some of those. And I have I'll give you a link to some instructions about that. So there's lots of ways to go about it that aren't so like stressful. What else did you notice? And what about the thinking through how to use it in your group? How was that? Any thoughts? Hard enough to just get to the strengths and the assets, but you can kind of see how that might work, and how and the challenge in front of you and how that leads to the ownership, I think. So here's the link to the slides I wasn't able to show you that I described, and you can find more resources, and including a toolkit that has this asset mapping tool on it here. So there's 2 links. Oops, I gave you the same link. Here is, sorry. Here's my slides. Oops, it's not copying. Reason. Okay, we'll have to send it to you after. I just can't seem to get it in here, unless Leah, you can figure it out. So I'm gonna kind of wind us down here. We reviewed some of our cultural belonging principles and how that applies to the small groups today. We did some creative problem solving on some of the, challenges that pop up frequently in the small groups, or that some of you might encounter as you start and launch your new small groups. And we looked at how we could grow a sense of shared partnership among the participants in your group, so that you're not out there alone, kind of delivering the small group as a service. So lots of tools for you to work with and think about. And we're here to support you. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to Jackie or me or Leah or Rabbi Sarah, obviously. There are other activities in the cultural belonging world that the Federation offers that you're welcome to participate in. We have quarterly practice groups and various workshops, all of which are on that link that I sent you. And the first one with the cultural belonging resource site, we have a conference coming up in May, 473K Belonging Experience, a virtual conference. So stay tuned, just keep your eye out for things, ways for you to kind of keep participating in this cultural belonging community. There's a lot of good resources out there. So I'm going to turn it over to Leah and Rabbi Paris.
I think the only thing we've got left to share is we're going to send you all of these resources, so don't feel pressure to click on all of these links, and I will send out that conversation guide. As always, if you want something different, like your group is experiencing X, Y, or Z, and you want a teaching on something different than what we're sending out, let me know. I love personalizing those guides for all of you. Yeah, Leah, anything else to add?
Nope, I think that's it.
Quick question. Several folks had DM'd me about sort of connecting or following up offline, but I realized I don't have everyone's contact info. Is it possible that that could be shared among us?
I was going to say, I think that would be a huge resource, and we will not blind copy this email, so that way you'll have everyone's contact information. And if you want specific, I love that. And we're also thinking of, and this is something to let us know what you think of, putting y'all in pods of other leaders that you can like reach out to, and we can meet with you and that kind of thing. And so if you have a request for someone that you would like to be in a pod with based on conversations you had, let us know, and we'll kind of send those matches out.
Great. Are there any other announcements before we wrap it up with one more connecting activity? No? Okay. So we just want to say thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating this time. Thank you for being there last time. Thank you for all the work you're doing, creating the sense of connection and belonging within the groups at Emanu-El. It's been really wonderful. And we'd love for you to share in the chat or aloud as you leave, because we're going to make sure you leave on time today. What is one idea that you learned today, either today or last time, that you want to implement in your group that you're excited about? And with that, we just want to say thank you. So feel free to put it in the chat, perhaps if you prefer, or if you haven't had a chance to say anything today and you want to jump in with that, we welcome that too. We have a few minutes. Anyone? Love the icebreakers. Great. Perfect. Summarizing at the end of the meeting. Directly making a suggestion based on someone's strengths. Beginning and ending on a ritual. Doing breakout rooms early in a meeting. The importance of rituals. Such wonderful ideas. Well, wonderful to see everyone. Yes.
I love that people noticed things that we did in this meeting and also things that we could have done better in the meeting or that we could have done differently, which are both fabulous learning experiences that you can copy and learn from and that we are going to learn from as well. Perfect.
Yeah, it's excellent. Latka icebreaker. What's the Latka icebreaker?
The link icebreaker, maybe?
No, the Latka, someone suggested as an icebreaker, what do you like on your latkes, sour cream or applesauce? Like if people are feeling shy, because everyone has an opinion and it makes you smile.
That's great. If you meet really soon, between now and Thursday, you can ask people their favorite Hamantaschen flavor, maybe.
Yes.
Great.
Actually, our first meeting is on Thursday night, and I didn't even realize it was the first night of perm. Uh-oh.
Have everyone join in costume.
There you go.
Good idea. Thank you.
One little caveat to that, I just want to warn you when you do stuff like that, is just to include people who may not have grown up with latkes or Hamantaschen or whatever. Just kind of keep in mind, you want to throw out just a little escape clause for someone who may not come from that tradition, who may not be in the Ashke normative tradition, or may have been a Jew by choice, or blah, 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 blah. And just think of a way to include them as well. Just always think that way.
Like your favorite December holiday food or your favorite springtime something.
What would you, if you could put it on, if you could put on a potato pancake, what would it be? Awesome.
Anyway, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
So
everybody.
wonderful
Thank
to be
you so
together.
much.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.